fucking time we do a sexy video!
It's tabletop time.
I'm Dave.
I'm Jen, and in a previous video, we've explored the filth of Nurgle, but in today's video...
The other kind of filth. That's right, we're gonna dive into the hideous excess of Slaanesh, she who thirsts, the avenue of all things lusty and sexual in Warhammer 40k. Ugh. So we're gonna have a look at how Slaanesh and sex in Warhammer has been depicted throughout history. This one's gonna be controversial! So thinking about female representation in Games Workshop games, there's probably very few models as divisive as the 2001 Demonette sculpted by Juan Diaz. It is the only model in this century I can think of that actually just has a full-on topless model by Games Workshop, and it's pretty wild to think of now. I've had a squad of these sitting in a box for the better part of a decade, and I think it's about time I try and repaint one of these. So I picked out my favorite sculpt of the bunch and set about removing the base so that I could strip the paint from it. So before I take this paint job any further, I wanted to take you through the history that led to the 2001 Juan Diaz Demonette. So it's kind of ironic that the last video that has come out on the channel was actually about women in wargaming, and it was while we were looking into that questions of how females have been presented in Warhammer over the years came up, and that's what got me looking through my old bits box and finding this Chaos Demonette. And it was interesting because Jen and I both agreed that we love Slaanesh. We really think Slaanesh is a fun part of Warhammer, and in a game as grimdark and evil as Warhammer with literal demons, lust, perversion, and excess is a perfectly acceptable quarter of the universe to have explored. So I wanted to take you through the history of Slaanesh and how it's appeared in Warhammer. Now, Slaanesh has existed since literally the very first publication of Warhammer Fantasy Battle in 1983, then called the Warhammer Fantasy Battle role-playing game. Slaanesh is listed exactly once in a little bracketed section and with 2 A's and 2 E's in the spelling. This is referenced as one of the 4 working chaos gods that they're basically working on, and nothing more is fleshed out here. Now, I've got a big gap in my knowledge. Books from this era are very inaccessible and I wasn't alive then. So I would love to know what came out after that. Was Slaanesh developed? Was there much done? Because the earliest references I could find to Slaanesh after that was 1988. In 1998, the Realm of Chaos books came out, and specifically the one I was looking at was Slaves to Darkness, which focused on Slaanesh and Khorne. This book is steeped in the 80s in all the best and worst ways, and it's the first time we really got to have a look at what Slaanesh was all about. One thing I did like when I was reading this is that even from its very beginning, even from the start of Slaanesh's inclusion into the universe proper, Slaanesh was welcoming and all-inclusive. Now, it is this edition where Slaanesh is the most specific. It's quite clear what they mean when they say lust, debauchery, etc., describing Slaanesh as the most popular chaos god amongst mortal men, and one of their favorite pastimes being, you guessed it, orgies. Verbatim, that's what it says. As I mentioned right from the get-go, Slaanesh is a god welcoming of all. And I quote from this edition, "All are welcome in the cults of Slaanesh. The only requirements are an unswerving dedication to the pursuit of pleasure and a willingness to explore every possible vice and perversion to this end." So in this first iteration, they don't really pull punches when they're describing the behaviors that these demons get up to, which when you're dealing with a literal hellish creature from a realm of lust and perversion, I guess that makes sense. However, these days, it doesn't really fly. I will say that while they do clearly state what is going on, they don't labor on it in excruciating detail. They go as far as to make it clear what kind of activities these people are up to, but they don't go any further than that. Overall, it's probably still a PG, I guess, with orgy being the one bad word quota for the day. Oh no, I've said it twice. Interestingly, in this era, Demonettes are described in terms such as diseased lewdness and unreined lust. And yet the models looked like this.
Jen, what do you think about these designs?
These are absolutely hideous. I don't know why the proportion of their hands are 10 times the size of their body. They're so goofy, but they have a bit of fun and charm to them that I can't quite describe.
The leather patches with studs very much feel 1980s. They have a vibe of Kiss going through them, which I think is kind of hilarious as well.
Definitely, and the mohawks add to that absolutely.
Now for this model, I decided I would make them a little less human, and that meant acetone stripping the model. I found it very funny. The skin here just peeled off. It looked very like body horror, very chaos. It was just flapping left and right.
beautiful. Now, fast forwarding to around 2001, that's what I wanted to talk about here, and this model in particular, where Slaanesh took a jump. I think these models are definitely more sexualized in a way that is attractive, so to speak. They're made to be beautiful, they're made to be more alluring. The original ones are hideous crab monsters. These have some elements of demon, but they're definitely sculpted to be more alluring.
There's something really beautiful about these models. I kind of get the vibe of like a succubus, or even looking back at the old John Blanche art, I can totally see a harpy vibe here. And I think that this is reflected really well in these model designs. And even with all the paint stripped off, I love the way these models look. There's something really unique and again, just simply beautiful about them.
This is even more exemplified in the Steeds of Slaanesh models that came out around the same time. Most of them don't even have demonic arms. They have human-looking hands holding blades, and their weird tentacle hair kind of vibes Asari from Mass Effect. And it makes me wonder if the Mass Effect designers didn't happen to be fans of Warhammer.
We're just gonna spray this white. I'm gonna be mostly painting flesh tones, and I wanna start from an easy base color to paint fairly pale colors on. So white it is. Careful, there's boobies.
Oh no, oh no.
Sorry, you're cancelled.
If we can say our personal thoughts on it, when I look at these models, I really think that the way they're sculpted, designed, and made is a way to look provocative. They're not overly sexualized and they look human to a degree. And I really appreciate the fact that these are just kind of naked ladies with crab hands.
So you like these designs?
I actually do. I think they're kind of tasteful.
Really?
Yes, and I actually don't like a lot of the old school sculpts. I think they're kind of badly designed, or like if we take Ariel, for example, she's got some real problems on her, but these models and these sculpts are actually really tasteful.
When painting the skin, I wanted to bring in some more pinks and purples that we come to know of Demonettes. So I just decided to build up from a purple base rather than a standard sort of Caucasian flesh tone, which we saw a lot of, these very pale or grey skinned Demonettes at this era. I wanted to do this to make them feel a little bit more alien, a little bit less human, and just play with some color and some modern techniques. Something I think that's interesting about these sculpts is, from my perspective, a lot of the problems we talk about in terms of Warhammer and the history of the models and over-sexualizing female models apply based on a context. And for me, the context of Slaanesh is that they are meant to be alluring. They are demons imitating humans and manipulating sexuality to basically taunt people into making terrible decisions. If there's anywhere where that kind of seductive pose should exist, this is probably the place. If anything, the only problem in this era of 40k is it's very homogenous. All of these designs look like the same image of beauty. And I think if there's anything that could make it feel more realistic to that cause, it would be diversity. Diversity in the body types of these sculpts, but also diversity in gender. There should probably be a couple more masculine figures amongst this squad to really make it feel like it could allure, I don't know, maybe a couple of Sisters of Battle to their side as well.
100% agree. I like these models, but I would like to see some sexy men, please.
Alright, it's getting too difficult to film this video. I mean, there's naughty bits, and I need to deal with that. I need to film, but I need a solution for the naughty bits, and I have the perfect idea. Now, where do we keep the tiny sensor bars? This'll do.
Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my.
Hey, so I wanted to tell you all a bit about the equipment we use. We do lots of reveals with fancy things like sliders and lots of LED light panels that have all kinds of fun colors. And it was Jazz's birthday recently. Ooh. And he asked for a whole bunch of stuff from Niwa. And we have so many new cool toys that we get to use because of this. So we wanted to say a big thank you to Niwa, and they actually have a special sale going on because of Jazza called Jazza. So if you want 21% off any of their products, such as this awesome massive slider, which is gonna like double the length of our slides. We've got LED panels to do all kinds of weird lighting stuff. Just go on over to their website, links are in the description, and use the code Jazza. I personally have bought some of their stuff using the code as well, so it's a super sweet company, and check it out if you're into tech and production at a great price. In the second edition of 40k and the early 90s for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, the edges already were starting to get softened just a little. They didn't go as far as to say the O word, or even describe the specific acts of these cultists and worshippers of Slaanesh, going on to more say how people would abandon their decency and give up anything in the pursuit of debauchery. And in this, they gave up beauty in exchange for giant crab claws. I do have to say the one thing that we really got robbed from in this generation to a modern day is we've been denied the true form of Demonettes as depicted in the art. Where are my frog Demonettes, cowards? Give me frog Demonettes. Look at this thing.
So I grabbed some color references and I realized that lilac pairs really well with a minty green. So I decided that that tentacle effect on the top, the weird tendril hair, I would do in that color. This also is the same colors as the Joker, I realized.
I'm the Joker, baby.
It's a really vibrant color and I think it works well. Moving on from there, I painted all the cloth elements a nice dark shiny black, while I painted the claws in purple to blue tones for a bit of variety. Now, while I paint that miniature, I think it's time we talk about what happened after these Demonettes. We got the 2007 odd plastic sculpts where everything got a bit sanitary. I think that they'd started to lean away from the sexuality in Slaanesh, and in their sculpts, they heavily moved towards the body horror.
Yeah, I agree. There's something very odd about these sculpts in particular. It just looks like maybe these sisters of battle that had turned to chaos and had sort of mutilated themselves and had put on a corset for some reason.
I'm going to be honest, to me, they look like old fish women. I don't know what that means, but that's what they look like to me. It's just my descriptor.
What you doing in my waters?
So here's the thing, right? Where you stand on whether or not there should be sexy models or not sexy models is kind of irrelevant. Games Workshop have made a sexy models faction. Slaanesh is the god of lust, the god of temptation, the god of excess. And they've chosen to create in 20, 30 years of lore, these Demonettes that are supposed to embody that. These are the least alluring models I think Games Workshop have in their range. And I actually think that's a problem. Pretty much every other faction, I'd say standard Imperial Guardsmen of the era, are more alluring than these hideous things. These sculpts I loathed. I had no interest in Slaanesh for this entire generation. I think that they completely missed the mark on what they're trying to represent. And for me, they're just a 0 out of 10. I really don't like them. I never have.
I believe those sculpts were the reason you actually bought these old ones.
Yeah, I, at the time, around 2010, 2012, was looking to add some demons to my Chaos army and have some characters to go alongside some Slaanesh Emperor's Children Noise Marines, and I couldn't stomach the hideous fish women things, whatever they are. They're disgusting mummified hag ladies. They're gross.
But luckily enough for us in particular, Games Workshop did come out with a new line of Slaanesh models, the Hedonites of Slaanesh, in fact.
These are mortal Slaanesh worshippers for Age of Sigmar, and I think the pendulum has finally swung back in the right direction. We're getting a tasteful and PG view of lewdness or suggestivity, I could say. The faction clearly embodies excess, sexuality, and all of that, while still being tasteful. They're wearing clothes, there's nothing overly exposed, but they give all the right subtlety and hints towards the direction of what Slaanesh suggests.
And they have sexy men, and I'm totally here for that.
It's true, there's a level of diversity, androgyny, and ambiguity in these models that I think really captures what they have said in the lore about Slaanesh all along. And then we also get some fantastic characters, such as their great leader, this special character, who is this massive gluttonous man who I imagine has an excess of taste for fine dining.
I'm also a huge fan of the overall concept that they've gone with. It's like this traveling circus Arabian sort of style, and it definitely has this era of seductiveness to it.
Clearly, they've drawn some inspiration from the movie 300 and Xerxes. I'm definitely getting those vibes from these warriors.
Either way, when we saw this release come out, Dave and I both really wanted to collect them and still kind of do.
So with the model range being as it is, we now still have the 2007 odd plastic Demonettes sitting on shelves. The core range of demons hasn't changed, but with the way Games Workshop is going, they're bound to in the future. I'd be curious to know where you all in the comments want to see this direction. For me, I would love to see an emulation of what they've done in the Mortal range with the Hedonites. I think the pendulum with the Demonettes could swing a little bit back towards alluring while also being tasteful and including a whole bunch more diversity.
I personally would like to see just a little bit more diversity from this range. While they are doing really good things and making good strides, I do think we could include a little bit more in the model choices.
And while I don't think we should quash the idea of sexuality from Warhammer, yes, it's a game, but it's an adult game that's steeped in lore. And while we shouldn't do anything inappropriate with our game, I think that it's important not to forget this massive facet of human existence. Even the most Puritan among us must acknowledge that sexuality, romance, affection, and attraction is literally part of the human condition. And one of the Chaos Gods embodies that. It's kind of their whole point. But with that said, I do think the idea of Slaanesh equals sex is as boring a take as Tzeentch equals birds. It's time we see some Slaanesh models that represent excess in other ways. Consumption, thievery, greed. There are so many different avenues they could take Slaanesh that I would love to see, and I could see that embodied in different units in the range if they release them in the future. Diablo 3 had these treasure goblins that would come and steal your treasure, put it in a sack, and run away. That to me is the perfect unit for a unit of demons popping out of the warp and stealing valuables before taking it back to Slaanesh's domain.
Yeah, I feel like Slaanesh could do a line that's like the 7 deadly sins, and that could be really cool.
Absolutely, and I would love to hear in the comments what you all think. What do you want to see from Slaanesh? Or should they just expunge this sexy demon from our games?
No, not my sexy man.
So continuing our story of Slaanesh through the ages, we reached around 2000-2002. We were in 3rd edition 40k and we had the new Diaz sculpts of Demonettes. In 40k, Demonettes were still appearing as part of Chaos Space Marine armies, and broadly in fantasy as well as attachments to the various Chaos forces you could field. In this era, a lot of people attached a lot of fondness to the Diaz sculpts of Demonettes, and I think that's because they're the most beautiful. But as I've been exploring this lore, I don't necessarily think they're the most correct. They don't have tails, there's no androgyny about them, it's all femininity. They have 2 boobies. And Demonettes are almost always described as having 1. They're also far more beautiful than hideous, with their hideousness being relegated to very specific features. But broadly, things continued pretty much as they were, with Slaanesh and demons being an add-on to the other Chaos Rangers. It wasn't until 2008, with the big overhaul to demons, that we started to see the modern version of Slaanesh come into the fore. Games Workshop definitely used this opportunity to update the narrative around Slaanesh. They were having great success getting their parents of 13-year-olds to buy their kids Warhammer models, and half-naked women parading around in Chaos armies probably wasn't helping the argument. So here we start to see Slaanesh move away from sex, basically. Now, they haven't stripped it away, completely removing it from the lore, but they've definitely added a lot more. Slaanesh's domain is explored in greater detail, and the 6 layers of Slaanesh's fortress really start to hammer in that Slaanesh is more tied to the 7 deadly sins, minus wrath, Korn owns that, than it is to just lust. We start to see how vanity, how excessive greed, how gluttony all fall into the domain of Slaanesh, which means that what was once the dominating aspect of lust and perversion is now relegated to a mere 1/6 of Slaanesh's domain. I loved this change. I think the gods are more interesting when they're deep, and this is the Slaanesh that rapidly became one of my favorite Chaos gods. Tzeentch is actually my favorite. There's so much possibility with Slaanesh, but I feel they're hemmed in, and this era and the models definitely showcase that. They pulled the sexuality back, but released a bunch of gross Demonettes that were still meant to embody that, without exploring in the model range that they'd begun to explore in the lore. Fast forward to 2015 and we weren't sure what was going to happen to Slaanesh. Age of Sigmar had come out, and within the setting, Slaanesh the deity itself had been imprisoned, literally removed from the setting in a prison of the gods. There was a lot of rumors at this time that this was heralding the beginning of the end for Slaanesh, that Games Workshop had lost their stomach for having a god that represented this kind of perversion and debauchery in a game that was increasingly being marketed to a younger audience. At this time, no new models were released, and it seemed like potentially 40k would start to follow the same path. This trend would continue, with a little bit of doubt and rumor mills talking about the decline of Slaanesh, mixed with the potential release of Emperor's Children fighting each other left and right, until in 2021 we maybe got the glimmers of what the modern Slaanesh world will look like. The Hedonites of Slaanesh range for Age of Sigmar was launched, and I've got to say, they are fantastic. This range showed mostly mortal models, where they began to showcase all the elements of the lore that they'd really started to flesh out in 2008 with the first Demons Codex. We're getting to see excesses of vanity, we're getting to see gluttony, and all of these things start to take form in their mortal followers, and I'm hopeful that in future demon releases we'll begin to see the same. Some demon models were updated, such as the Greater Demon, the Keeper of Secrets, and I've got to say this is a fantastic redesign. It to me combines a PG version of Allure and weird androgyny in a way that it is beautiful to look at but also disturbing. I find this is the perfect way to depict Slaanesh for me. You want to keep looking at it, but you're not sure why, and I think that is the direction I would love to see the model range go. My mind definitely isn't fully made up on what they should do with Slaanesh in the future, but I think it'd be a damn shame if they got rid of it. We're certainly in a day and age where we can start to include inclusion and diversity in our model ranges, and when you're talking about the range of human appetites, what better place would there be to put that? I really do hope they update the Slaanesh demon range. I think it's kind of static and boring and could really do with a Hedonite style update. And if they decide to advance the lore in that direction as well, I'd be keen to see what they do. These were a lot of thoughts and a bit of history to explore the god of desire in Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar and Warhammer Fantasy, and I hope you've enjoyed the ride. I think it's time though that we get back to those final touches on the model and we show you what a Demonette looked like in the year 2000.
Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting these videos. This one was a bit of fun and a bit funny coming off the back of Jen's video. We did just want to explore a cool model from history and talk a little bit about one of the Chaos Guards, so we hope you've enjoyed it. This one's a bit of a cheeky one. Cut us some slack, we had fun with it. And patrons, guess what? We got something special for you. Your reveals, censor bar free, baby! Woo! Yeah, that's about as cheeky as we get here.
Links are in the description down below.
Thanks, guys.
So there you have it. Those patrons have seen the full reveal, but everyone else, I hope you like my dorky little censor bar. Sorry, YouTube is not into that kind of stuff.
I'm really impressed at how good you made this pewter model look. It has a really modern paint scheme, but it's a model that was from 2000 and something?
2001, yeah.
Wow.
There was a lot of detail that they managed to push into these models.
A lot of detail.
Overall, that was just a vehicle to explore the history of Slaanesh in 40k. And in summary, I've got to say, it's a sticky one. I'm not really sure where I land on the issue. Slaanesh is such an intrinsic part of the setting that it's interesting to see where they'll take it in the future. Regardless, I think I'm happy for the swords and sorcery topless characters of the 80s to go the way of the vintage shelves in the cabinets. And I'm all for the delicate silks, shisha smoke, and hideous excess of something like the new Hedonites for Slaanesh range.
Yeah, that Demon Prince is mwah.
Thanks for watching the video. If you like the content and you want to see us do a Slaanesh redesign like we discussed earlier in the video, make sure you click like. If we get a lot of love, we'd love to use some of your ideas. I personally have always wanted to see the excessive greed in some characters, some thieves and things like that. Could be fun.
Absolutely. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well. It helps us out and lets us know if you like our videos.
So say goodbye.
Bye.
Oh my
I
god!
got the memo late. Did you record a sexy video?
Yeah, there were boobies.
Oh my god, why was I not told earlier? Oh my god! The one time we do a sexy video!
That was great.